Hi, everybody, and welcome to Echo Live. My name is Anna, and I'm coming to you from the Michigan Science Center's Echo Distance Learning Program. Today, we have a very exciting tinkering-themed program for you today, and we'll be joined by another very special guest for this program. Raul is here to talk to us a little bit about the process of invention as it relates to how you can be inventive at home by starting off tinkering with your own toys, or maybe by designing toys of your own that maybe you didn't purchase from the store. If you haven't done so already, you can go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat feature of whichever of our live platforms you are tuning in from. I can see that we have familiar faces starting to chime in on our Facebook Live, in our YouTube Live, and even here in our Zoom meeting. So welcome, everybody. Welcome back to our followers who are here with us every single day. Lots of very familiar faces here. So Raul, why don't you come on in and join us?
All right. Hi, everybody. So once again, thank you so much for having me. If you're like me during these times, I do tend to get a little bit bored. So hopefully today's program will be able to cure a little bit of that. So my first question for everybody is, what do you think invention is? Why do we invent? Go ahead and put that in the chat. So when we think about invention, we usually think about really, really big projects, very complex projects, things that help advance civilization even, right? But invention could be something super duper simple. And for invention, there's a very special process known as the process of invention. So I actually do want to go ahead and talk about that briefly. So let's go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint, and we can talk about that process of invention. So the first step to the process of invention is to think about it. Have there been problems in your life that could be fixed by maybe coming up with a device, a new process to approaching that? Absolutely. When you do that, you start to kind of explore solutions, right? That's our second step of the process of invention, because there are some people that most probably have had the same problems as you and have also tried to find a solution. So that solution to your problem might already exist. So how do you explore it? Well, you could either go to the library, look it up online, watch shows about the topic, ask experts. If you can't find too much information on that, or if you just can't find the right solution to your problem, you can come up with your own. Now, when you do this, you want to go ahead and come up with a picture. You want to visualize how that solution looks like. So that's our third step of the process of invention. That third step is to sketch it. And that's just fun by itself, right? So when you are sketching, you want to think about how your device is going to move, how easy it is compared to the task that you're already doing, right? So you want to make that work much easier. And then you start to build what you drew. And this is our create it step. So when you're creating, you really want to tinker with a lot of materials. I actually did that for this program too. I went to several different stores and I couldn't find some stuff, as we're going to see, but I always came up with a replacement for it, which you can also do at home. And then once you have your prototype built, now is the time to try it. So by trying your invention out, you get to find out, hey, this is working, this isn't working. How can I make those little specific variables act a little bit better, work more according to the problem that you're trying to solve, right? And that actually takes you to the very next step, which is tweak it. You kind of change your invention a little bit, make it a little bit better, add different materials. And then finally, if you want to sell it, right? If this is your own original idea, might as well make some money off of it. Now, one thing that I do always want to reiterate is that invention, this process specifically, isn't linear. So you can jump around from sketch it, to think it, to explore it, to create it, to try it. You might not even touch some of these processes, right? You might not sell it in the end. You might not even create a prototype because your sketch might be enough to kind of get you thinking on how to solve it, right? So there's a lot of variation to that. So I want to go ahead and play a game. Now this game is called Which is an Invention? Now the object of this game is to think about these two pictures that I'm going to show you. I think I have like 3 slides of them. I'm going to describe what is on that slide, and I want you to tell me in the chat which one is an invention. All right? So let's go to our first slide. So you'll notice on the left, we have a fire truck. These trucks are made to put out giant real-world fires. On the right, we have a toy of a fire truck. You see it has little lights, probably very fun to play with, right? It's just a representation of what you see on the left. So my question to my viewers, which one is an invention? The fire truck, which is a very serious device that we use to put out fires on the left, or the toy fire truck? Okay, so type that into the chat. Let's go on to the next slide. Now, on this next slide, we have a cruiser. I believe that's the Queen Victoria. You can go on vacation there. It carries many, many people, a lot of supplies, and it goes on the ocean, right? Super nifty. But on the right, you have a paper boat. Its purpose is to kind of float inside of a puddle, and then it'll eventually break down by how wet it is, right? Or maybe you just use your imagination and play with it without the water, right? Which one is an invention? The left cruiser or the right paper boat? And then finally, I have one more slide. So I have a couple of windmills here. The one on the left actually takes energy from the air, right? We call that kinetic energy, the energy of movement, and it makes it rotate. And from that, we generate power. Super nifty. It's really great green energy. Hopefully, this is the direction that we start to go to in the future. On the right, though, we have a little plastic windmill on a stick. So you put this in your yard, it does the same thing, but it doesn't charge any batteries like the one on the left. You can spin it with your hand. Super fun toy, right? So which one is an invention? Did we get anyone in there that responded to any of these?
We did. We had some great answers start to come in through the chat on our YouTube and our Facebook and here in Zoom. The first question you asked about the fire truck, it seemed like people are overwhelmingly choosing the real fire truck as opposed to the toy. As we moved through our answers, when we talked about the boat, a couple people think that the cruiser, some people even know the name of that ship or have been on a similar one like that, a big cruise ship. They think that the cruise ship, but at that point, we have some people starting to think that maybe both options are an example of an invention. And then by the time we got to the windmill, we have a lot more people saying that both the windmills that you showed us are inventions. So what do you think, Raul?
I think that they are thinking exactly correct. If you look on the next slide, I wrote, they are all inventions. You know, some inventions start out as really serious projects and then end up as toys. Does that mean that that toy isn't an invention? Well, of course it is. A person made it. It serves a purpose that the original inventor wanted it to do, right? So just because it doesn't complete a really complicated task doesn't mean that it's not an invention, right? And I actually want to talk about some of the most famous instances where this happened. So there's a really cool mechanism here on my next slide. In the chat, what do you think this is? Let's look at this. We see that there are two almost pill-shaped things in there. And it seems like over on 3 and 2, that's supposed to move almost like a pumping motion, right? So this is actually a heat pump. Now, this heat pump was developed by a scientist called Lonnie Johnson. And aha, oh, wow, good job. I see a comment that says water gun. Well, if we go on to the next slide, you'll see that you are absolutely right. And on the left there, you see Lonnie Johnson, and you have his famous super soaker. So he actually was an engineer. He worked for NASA, and at that time, he wanted to invent a heat pump. And he was in his bathroom working with it, right? And then when that heat pump shot out some water, he was like, wow, this would make a really cool water gun. And that was the beginning of the very successful super soakers. And you can kind of see almost the same mechanism. And of course, it's blocked off by the plastic on the outside, right? The mechanism works a little bit differently inside. Now, does that mean that every toy was invented this way? No, absolutely not. there are some people that are just toy inventors because that's an actual job. You can do this. And a really notable instance of this was an inventor known as Ruth Handler, and she's actually on the next slide. You might notice the doll might be a little bit familiar to you, right? Who knows what that doll is? Go ahead and type it in my comments there. And if you're thinking, hey, that looks kind of like a Barbie doll, you're absolutely right. She invented the Barbie doll. So the way that she invented Barbie was that she had her kids around the house, and she would notice that the kids would play house, but their dolls were baby dolls. They were super big. So they couldn't play as seriously, and it wasn't as immersive as it could have been. So she was like, hey, why don't I make an adult doll, kind of like this one, not a baby, so my kids can play house, right? And that's basically how Barbie was born. You guys can do this too. You don't necessarily have to have a background in engineering to invent something super cool and super fun. So have you guys ever invented a toy or a game? Go ahead and put that into the comments. I would actually like to know that. I know I used to do that as a kid. I used to make board games, invent little toys. I see some people saying yes already. But what was it? What was it? Go ahead and type it in. Some people say no. Well, maybe today is going to be the day that changes, right? I assure you. Okay, so I want to go on to the next slide and talk to you about a very specific type of toy that we're going to be making today. So this is what we call automata. That's plural. The singular form is automaton. So automata are basically machines or control mechanisms designed to follow a predetermined command operations instructions. They could be powered by electricity, they could be powered by water, they could be powered by your hand, they could be powered by batteries, anything that you want, right? So these are some ancient examples of automata. You'll notice that on my right, at least, there seems to be this figure with a chessboard. Well, this was a self-chess playing device. You'll notice there in the middle, there's like this boy that when you lift up the clothes in the back, you see that very complex mechanism that when you add energy to it, it starts to write. And then on the left, well, that seems like a really super cool elephant, right? That's actually a clock. It's a water clock that was created, I think, in the 8th or 10th century by a scientist called Jezere. And basically, when water spills in there, it starts a chain reaction that makes the animals and the people on there move. Super duper precise too. Now, when they started thinking about these devices, they wanted to start out thinking about the end goal, right? What should my device do? And based on what the device does, you want to come up with little mechanisms that will move according to what you want, right? And that's exactly what we're going to do today with our automata. I'm going to show you how to make two very specific types of automatons. And let's go ahead and go to the next slide so we can see the very first one. Now, this was a GIF that used to move. I'm not too sure why it's not moving. If you look there on the right, you'll see a circular, a red circle, and you'll see a little wooden piece known as a slide. The circle is known as a cam, and the follower is that little wood device. So you'll notice there's a little dot that says pivot point. Well, this is where you would put in something where it spins on, right? It's an axis, right? And as it moves, it makes that follower slide up and down. So that's one type of motion that we can make. And I actually want to make a really cool cam and follower automaton using a cardboard box, using skewers. These are hard to find right now. I went to a couple of stores, I couldn't find any. So what I ended up buying were a couple of these dowels. You'll need cardboard. Now, you're going to be able to cut circles with that cardboard. So these are going to be your cams. Straws, a little character, and actually, let me go ahead and zoom in so you can see just a little bit better. Little character. Tape and maybe some hot glue or scissors. Now, these are interchangeable. If you want to just use glue, that's fine. If you want to use tape, if you want to use both, that's also fine. So let me go ahead and start plugging in my glue gun so it heats up. Let's put that off to the side right now. So the first thing that I want you all to do is to grab your box and go ahead and put a hole in the top, a hole in the side, then a hole in the other side. All right? Now, I'm going to go ahead and grab my first skewer or dowel, and I want to connect these to my cam, right? So to do that, I want to go ahead and punch a hole in the middle of my cam. Now, once we have a hole in there where the skewer can go in, go ahead and put it inside of the box. Follow it by sticking it all the way in there, and then move your cam to the middle. Now, this is the point where I would either add glue or some tape. We'll do that at the end. That's just for it to be a little more sturdy. The next thing we want to do is through that top hole, go ahead and stick a little piece of your straw. It doesn't have to be too long, and that's just to reduce friction. If we have a lot of friction, this isn't going to work. And then after that, you want to go ahead and stick your dowel or skewer in there and connect it to your other cam. So already we have a cool looking mechanism. So technically, this bottom one would be your cam. As you add energy to that, your follower starts to spin. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and glue that straw on there so it is a little bit sturdy. There we go. Now, where do we usually see cams? We can find cams inside of car engines, airplane engines. It's actually a very nifty device that we can use. Okay, and now we're basically almost done. I'll go ahead and spin this, and the top starts to spin. The final part is to go ahead and tape your character on top. And you'll notice that I put a little smiley face with its mouth open, and then another smiley face with its mouth closed to kind of make it look like a flipperama effect, right? And if you guys don't know what flipperamas are, basically you draw a picture and then you lift up the picture up and down, and it looks like your character is moving. It's a type of animation. Let's go ahead, fold that in. Move that up. And we're basically done. So actually, let me zoom in so you can kind of see how it moves. So for this to work, go ahead and twist right there. And look at that. Very simple, super duper fun. Be creative with this. If you want to print out characters, that's even better. If you want to draw your own characters or your own inventions, please also do that. This is just one type of automaton that we can make, right? This next one that I'm going to show you is a little more complex, but just as fun. I'd say it's probably a little bit more fun than that one. So for this one, you're going to need a lot of cardboard. And it's actually kind of tricky to do this. So let me move this over. What I did here is I took a lot of cardboard, made sure it was the exact same size, and then I glued everything in between to make a block. You can use a wooden block and then maybe drill a hole through it. Ask your parents' permission to do that. Anytime that you use the hot glue gun, always ask for your parents' permission. I want you all to be safe. Don't burn yourselves. Don't cut yourself. But once you have this all glued together, this is actually a pretty sturdy base for your automaton. Now I want this to go ahead and stand up. So I have another little piece of cardboard. I'm going to hot glue gun that just like that. So let's add a little bit more glue. And stick it on there like so. That's step one. Now, as it's drying, I want to go ahead and use these little wires. Now, for me at least, it was pretty hard to find these in stores. So ask your parents if they have wires of any type. What I did is I took a paper clip and I undid it. I made it straight, okay? So here's what I want you to do. You'll notice that on my cardboard, I have a little bit of space to stick in a piece of wire. There's little holes in there. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna stick it on that side. Once it's a little bit low. All the way to the other side, just like that. So you should have maybe about an inch on both sides, okay? Here's the trickier part. I'm gonna take both of these, bend it down. Now on one side, I'm going to make a little U shape, and on the other side, we're gonna make a little handle. So we're gonna make a crank. That should do it. And on this side, again, it's very tricky to do this. If you can't do this by yourself, get your parents' permission, get your parents' help, because I don't want you to get cut by wire either. Make a little U there. Okay, so now we have a little U on one side, a little crank on the other. Now, I also brought a little tiny piece of square foam. What you're going to do is in the U side, stick your piece of foam right through the middle. It's a little tricky, but that's what it should look like when you're done. A little bit closer here. So as you spin this, this should stay in place, right? Now, the next step is to make a little loop with that same wire. Here's what I did. Another paper clip. I'm just going to hot glue gun it up here, all right? And you'll see why we're doing that in just a second. Now, when you're doing this, make sure that you can stick another straight wire right through that hook and then inside of that foam. Okay. And again, if you can't do this by yourself, ask an adult. I'm going to let that dry. I'm also going to put a little bit of tape in there for time's sake. Okay. And now go ahead and stick your piece of wire through the top. And pierce the little piece of foam. Okay, so now you should have a mechanism that looks kind of like that. When you turn the crank, it should go up and down. Here's the fun part. We're going to go ahead and stick a character on there. As you can see, I went ahead and drew a little sun with sunglasses since it's May. And I'm just going to take that to the top. Or you could hot glue gun it, whatever you have at home. And now our crank automaton is finished. So how does it work? Well, when I turn the crank, let me turn it that way for you. You can see the sun. Oh, there we go. As we turn the crank, we see our sun going up and down, kind of turns around too. Super duper fun. Okay, so these are our two very basic automatons. I recommend you guys make these at home. It's a good place to start. Now, if you remember anything about the process of invention, the next step would be to tweak them, right? Make them better. What can we do to make them better? Well, for my final automaton, I made this. Now, this is just another cam follower automaton. So you see the same mechanism down here, but on the top, I added another two cams. There's your cam, there's your follower. And that follower has another little piece of that skewer going straight through to another can, and then I added fins. So it looks kind of like that windmill that we saw at the beginning. And when I go ahead and spin this, look at that. I want you to see back here too. When I go ahead and spin that, you make all 5 of those cans move, and your windmill starts to work. So if you want the activity guides for any of these, they're going to be on the website. Make sure that you guys check those out. If you want to learn how to make this, let me know, and I will make another one of those activity guides. It's basically the same mechanism. You don't necessarily have to make one like this. You can make one with even more cans. You can make one where you make a hybrid of this automaton and this one. So when you do that at home, I want to see them. Make sure that you tag my site. Please do that for us. If you come up with something even cooler, I want to see it. Maybe I want to copy you. But again, let me know if you want this as a write-up, and we'll make sure to put that on the website too. So I want to take this final moment to go ahead and answer any and all questions that I can.
So Raul, we've gotten a couple questions coming in through our various platforms. Stephanie on Facebook asked, do you need to use hot glue, or can you use regular glue or some other alternative if they don't have hot glue at home?
That's a really good question. So the reason that I like hot glue is because it dries really quickly. And then once it's dry like this is already dry, right? Once it's dry, it's also very hard to kind of move. You can use regular glue for some of this. Like if you're going to be sticking these pieces of cardboard together, that's fine, but it's going to dry overnight. So if you want to do it quickly, use tape or hot glue. Great question.
Yeah, so it sounds like people can really use all sorts of a variety of materials. So if they don't have something that you specifically used, I love the suggestion for the paper clip. I don't think I would have thought of that if you can't find wire, or maybe you don't have wire at home, that unfolding a paper clip really gives you the same thing. So that's pretty interesting. We'll wait and see if any other final questions come in. Some people are saying that they'd like for you to create that activity guide for your maybe a little more complicated automata there, maybe one that combines the two mechanisms. So as Raul said, if you're looking for those activity guides, as always, you can find those on the Michigan Science Center's website. This website right here on the bottom, mi-sci.org/at-home-science is where we list all of our program guides and activity guides for try this at home science experiments. Raul did a really great job of including step-by-step photos. And of course, you can always check back on this video. It'll get posted to our Facebook and our YouTube channel if you'd like to rewatch it to have a video instruction guide to go along with them. Now, this week is pretty special because it is actually National Makers Week. And so we have even more maker-themed program coming to you for the rest of the week here on Echo Live. We hope we'll see everyone back here tomorrow at 2:30 for another Maker episode. And final comment really before we head out today is someone did comment on my DAPSEP t-shirt. I thought it was pretty fitting for our program today. So if you are interested in engineering, maybe taking these types of activities to the next level, because that's something that you are passionate about and you picture yourself doing for the rest of your life. If you live in the Detroit area, you can check out DAPSEP. They are the Detroit Area Pre-College Engineering Program, and they can help to put you in contact with schools and local engineering organizations and clubs. And they also have activities and games and suggestions that you can try at home to get yourself started on that career path. A lot of people just telling us that they thought this was awesome, Raul. They really want to start to make their own at home. And so I think we can probably sign off for the day. Thanks so much for joining us.